Yesterday, two Republican congressmen issued press releases boasting about projects that they brought into the stim, the bill, now law, for which they did not vote. Today, even worse, we have the revelation that the wife of the Republican whip of the House works for a bank that has taken $267 million so far in taxpayer bailout dollars. The wife of Mr. Party of No himself, Eric Cantor, Mrs. Party of No, Diana Cantor, runs the Virginia branch of Emigrant Bank's Wealth Management Division. ProPublica reporting that earlier this month, the Treasury Department used $267 million to buy preferred stock in the private banking company that owns Emigrant. In other words, Mrs. Cantor's boss's bank got $267 million in bailout money that Congressman Cantor voted for. Earlier this month would make it after Congressman Cantor had declared in an interview, quote, "I think most American taxpayers now are sort of scratching their head, wondering when all this bailout stuff is going to end, and probably thinking, you know, when is my bailout coming?" His already did. Already, the minority whip hard at work attacking President Obama's new plan to provide Americans with affordable housing.
93% of America's families are current on their mortgages and, frankly, are out there wondering, you know, who is going to pay for this continued succession of bailouts. Homeowners right now are suffering under skyrocketing property taxes. And if we put the bill for $50 billion plus on top of all the bills that families have right now, you may very well be set to encourage more foreclosures. We just cannot continue to pay for the kind of things that this administration thinks that we can.
Except the alternative stimulus plan touted this month by the GOP would have offered the same broad concept as the Obama plan, government subsidies for lower mortgage interest rates. Only the cost wouldn't have been $50 billion. It would have been $121 billion. Let's turn now to our own Eugene Robinson, associate editor and columnist at The Washington Post. Good evening, Gene.
Evening, Keith.
There is every reason to suppose that the minority whip's wife had nothing to do with how her corporate bosses changed their tax status so they could get $267 million in our bailout money. But she's a principal figure in that company. She's a managing director, and the company directly benefited from something he voted for. Doesn't he have to announce that? Isn't he supposed to recuse himself from voting? Isn't that in Robert's Rules of Order or something?
You know, knowing the U.S. Congress, it probably isn't, but it should be. I mean, if I were in charge of, say, buying ink for the Washington Post, and I happen to place a very large order with the company that my wife worked for, I think my bosses would appreciate knowing that. And I think it's the sort of thing that ought to be disclosed, especially, frankly, by someone who is subsequently so critical of the very notion of bailing anybody out.
But there's a context for this. Last week, Mr. Cantor's spokesman sent out that obscenity-riddled parody of the AFSCME ad to Politico. Had to apologize. Yesterday, Mr. Cantor posted this boastful video at YouTube. No Republicans voted for the stimulus. The music was Back in the Saddle by Aerosmith. Tonight, they've had to pull that down because of a copyright infringement thing that Cantor's office had never checked about. And now this with the conflict of interest on the bank bailout. My question here is fairly simple. Eric Cantor helps the Republicans how?
Too soon to tell, Keith.
Thank you, Alex Rodriguez.
Right. Look, he is seems to have become the kind of de facto young, fresh face of the Republican opposition. I wonder about this strategy. I've wondered all along. It seems to me that an opposition party that has one message, which is no, 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 is not going to make a lot of headway given the present circumstances, and I think you see that in the recent Gallup poll that has Congress's rating among the public going way up compared to where it was, with both Democrats and independents deciding that they think a whole lot better of Congress now than they did even just a month ago, and Republicans, even Republicans, only thinking slightly worse of Congress, only down by like 4 points. So this doesn't even seem to have a lot of traction among the Republican base.
But specifically, there are a lot of complicated questions here about Mr. Cantor. But let me again simplify. What is the deal with this guy?
Conservative, ambitious, a man who knows a vacuum when he sees it and decides to rush in. He, has been working his way up in the Republican leadership, and clearly, at least to my thinking, sees that John Boehner it seems to be part of the past, and I think Eric Cantor believes he is the future of the Republican Party in Congress. He's in regular touch with Newt Gingrich, and I think he's probably planning his own version of the 1994 Republican Revolution.
Okay.
Or attempted such.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that addendum there. Last point here. Between the two Republican congressmen who boasted in the press releases about the things they put in the stim, even though they didn't vote for the stim, and the Cantor inconsistency on bailouts, is there something of a pattern here? Is it Republicans getting in line for the very handouts that they profess to be against on principle?
I am shocked that such a thing is happening. I will take this Republican opposition to the stimulus program and to all the stuff a lot more seriously the first time a Republican congressperson or governor says no thanks to that, like Sarah Palin did, but actually didn't. No thanks for that bridge to nowhere. I want to hear the no thanks, and then I'll take it more seriously. Yeah, I haven't heard it yet.
Lindsey Graham already said, "What am I, an idiot? I'm not going to do that." He answers his own question. Our own Gene Robinson in the Washington Post. Thank you, Gene.